Meine Damen und Herren, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Digital Church in Aachen, where we have a public event in the context of AI Week. You've seen our beautiful trailer just a moment ago that I am super happy to have had a chance to help organize. This event brings together Alexander von Humboldt professors from all across Germany, as well as competitively selected junior researchers in the area of artificial intelligence. I hope you're looking as much forward to the discussion that we're going to have together as I do. And it's my privilege and my pleasure to now ask Professor Ulrich Rüdiger to the stage, the Rector of RWTH Aachen University, who will give us a short word of greeting. Thank you very much, Mr. Rüdiger, for being here with us today.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. And the digital church is a clear sign of a transformation process, I would like to say. So, sehr geehrte Frau Professorin van Weinsberg, sehr geehrter Herr Professor Hoos, Ladies and Gentlemen, ich freue mich sehr, Sie zur Podiumsdiskussion The Future of AI in Germany, Europe and Beyond begrüßen zu dürfen. Herzlich willkommen, a warm welcome. Today's panel discussion represents the key part of the unique Future of AI Summit at RWTH Aachen, under the auspices of the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation and with support of our AI Center. It brings together, for the first time, 19 of 23 Alexander von Humboldt professors in AI across Germany, and also includes 19 of the best junior researchers in AI. Many of you will have seen their posters earlier this afternoon. The Humboldt Professorship, financed by the Federal Ministry of Education and Research, is Germany's most valuable research award. Since 2008, it enables the holder conduct forward-thinking, long-term research at universities and research institutions and makes a sustainable contribution to Germany's ability to compete internationally as a location for research. In 2020, additional Alexander von Humboldt professorships for artificial intelligence were created. AI is a key topic for the future of our economy, science and society. That's why I'm very pleased that Aachen has become a hub of AI-related events and activities in Germany during the AI Week. The AI Week brings together researchers, industry, and the general public in and around Aachen to showcase the cutting-edge research on AI at RWTH, to connect key players from academia and industry to discuss AI-related topics with the citizen and to educate the next generation on AI. When we established the AI Center at RWTH, we set ourselves the goal of conducting competitive global research on AI methods. Incidentally, our AI Center serves not only as a point of contact and competence center for all topics related to artificial intelligence at the university, but also for our partners from industry. At the AI Center, we have pooled our expertise at the university, thereby bolstering our capabilities to be involved in political, scientific and social discussion forums and decision-making bodies, so we can contribute and be part of the solution as experts in the field, as those who can make a crucial contribution to our research. The close integration of applied disciplines facilitates a clear methodological push into these applications and promotes the application-specific developments of methods and algorithms. Our focus here is on selected RWTH-specific application areas, primarily from engineering and the life sciences. Examples include smart manufacturing, next-generation computing, and AI for biomedical applications. And as you can see, we have long since recognized the enormously significant role AI holds for the future of our science, economy, and society, and we are researching this topic for the benefit of us all. Main purpose of this summit is to share thoughts, ideas, and insights related to the future of AI in Germany and in Europe as well. You and I will now have the opportunity to attend corresponding discussion between AI experts and representatives from the industry. They will discuss with us the ethical and social aspects, the concerns of the general public, and the chances to benefits for the industry and for the society. So with that, I wish you all an inspiring panel discussion and, of course, exchange of ideas. And I have learned that now I have to welcome the panelists here on the floor. So once again, enjoy this late afternoon here in the Digital Church.
I am absolutely delighted to have you all here, and I'm so tempted to do an introduction for each and every one of you, but I shall refrain because I think you are much better at introducing yourself. The challenge is to keep this brief enough that then we have time for a discussion. Before we do this, you see a QR code right there. You can also see our names and faces, but people will introduce themselves in a moment, starting with me actually. This QR code gets you to a little interactive tool where you can feed questions to me. And I will try to field as many of them as I can to our panelists here. So that said, I'm Holger, Alexander von Humboldt Professor for AI here at RWTH Aachen University. And I will moderate tonight's panel discussion. On to my distinguished guests.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, first of all, Holger, for inviting me to be a part of this panel and for the incredible organization. I know how much work goes into it.
But you were a co-organizer,
so... But you've done so much. You've done so much. My name is Professor Dr. Amy van Weinsberg. I'm the Alexander von Humboldt Professor for the Applied Ethics of Artificial Intelligence. I'm Director of the Institute for Science and Ethics and founder of the Bonn Sustainable AI Lab. So I'm at the University of Bonn. My current research focus is looking at environmental justice issues when it comes to the making and the usage of AI. So carbon emissions for training, land usage, water usage, the mining of minerals that are required for the physical infrastructure.
Thank you very much for having me. My name is Alexander Tornede. I'm a postdoctoral researcher in the group of Marius Linder in Hanover. And I'm one of the young researchers that's here today as part of the Future of AI Summit, part of the Aachen AI Week, and hopefully I can bring their opinion here to the table a little bit. In my research, I'm working on interactive and explainable automated machine learning. So I think it's going to be a very interesting day.
Hello, my name is Oliver Brock. I'm from TU Berlin. I'm a roboticist, and I use robots to try to understand what intelligence is.
Hello, I am Jochen Hermans. I am a local Aachen real estate developer and not an AI expert. I am here as a citizen representative today. Thank you.
So I'm going to try this one. So hello, my name is Christian Themert. I'm the managing director of KI NRW, which is the stately funded competence platform for AI in Nordrhein-Westfalen. So we basically want to put all the fantastic research we have in this home state into application to really drive the transfer forward, but also connect the dots between the different research institutions and make this a place where just the best AI is going to be developed.
Hi, I'm Markus Rohrbach. I just started at the Technical University of Darmstadt, and I'm working on multimodal reliable AI, and I'm also one of the Alexander von Humboldt professors.
Excellent. Wow, you guys kept this really brief and to the point. I'm super impressed. So I'm thrilled to have Markus here and Christian, and if I may say Jochen, of course Oliver, Alexander and Amy. You guys represent the very best of AI research there is in Germany in a way, the perspective of concerned citizens. and the perspective of bringing it together across a large and diverse state within Germany, such as North Rhine-Westphalia. So I think we have a lot of different perspectives on AI here at the table. And, you know, I had two ways of opening this tonight, and I was going to make it dependent on the weather. If it would have been overcast and raining and maybe a bit of a thunderstorm, I would have asked about the risks of AI and all the things can go wrong. But, you know, I saw sunlight streaming into this beautiful church, and it's really a nice early autumn, late summer day. So I'm going to start the other way around. And what I really want to ask you is, you know, we hear so much about risks of AI and the things that could go wrong. And of course, we should take it seriously, and we will come back to it. But I want to really ask you, what are the most important opportunities in using AI for the benefit of societies, the diverse societies we have in Europe and across the globe, and also here in Germany, and humanity as a whole? And I'm wondering whether, Alexander, you would want to go first, just briefly telling us what you think. Why are you doing AI still, right? I mean, it could be scary. Why are you not saying, let's stop doing this, and you're going full steam ahead? What excites you? What can you bring to society, you and other young researchers and we all together?
I think it's a difficult question because AI has so much to offer besides all the risks, of course. I think one of the very interesting and probably also quite helpful directions you could go is like AI for medicine. This was already talking about a couple of minutes ago, right? If you try to drive that sector with AI forward, I think there's huge opportunities there that we can gain. And similar also in industry, right? Also for finding maybe solutions to hunger problems. I think there's really lots of opportunities where we really can help humanity and where AI can really bring us forward.
Can we manage these problems without AI just as well? I'm wondering, Christian, what's your perspective on this?
Well, personally, I'm totally convinced that AI is here to help in a lot of different areas of applications, be it for sustainability, for reduced energy consumption in buildings, for etc. But also medicine. I had a professor saying in one of our projects, sounds crazy, but we want to make use of technology of AI to make medicine more human again, to get rid of all the administrative work. So I think there's a lot of applications also in societal environments, but also it's here also to innovate, to have better product development, etc. And I think if we do it right, and we come to also the areas around that, I think there's a lot of chances in there, and we cannot do it without it, but we need to do it right.
So wow, simplifying bureaucracy. I think that's something we could all agree on, right? At the university and far beyond. I see a lot of nodding heads there. Brilliant. Markus, you wanted to add something.
I mean, maybe it's also a bit the wrong question to ask, could we do without it? Yes, I think we can do without it. We could also do without electricity. I mean, people were living without electricity. The people were living without mobile phones. But that's how we advance as humanity. You can say you don't like it or not, but we are in it. There's no way back, I think.
Excellent. Amy, just a second, because I have something for you. I was going to build you a bridge. Let's see whether you want to walk over it. I mean, one of the areas where I personally think AI could be super useful is to help us mitigate climate change. And some of you have already hinted at this direction, right? Climate modeling is an area where AI is being used increasingly. Less emissions, the kind of emissions that are actually illegal, to detect them and to do something about it, right? AI techniques are being used there. Amy, you're somebody who also cares a lot about the footprint of AI, right? The damage that AI does ecologically. So without totally dragging it into the risks and problems area, how do you see that balance? Do you think that AI can actually help with these problems as much as it can cause additional problems? And how do you think can we strike a good balance?
Okay. So then answering on the last question and walking the bridge to your question, yes, I agree that there is the potential for good if we do it in the right way, but I think it's also important for us to ask the question, at what cost, right? So if we're talking about streamlining our bureaucratic processes here or making it easier for the healthcare practice here, there are so many other populations that will suffer the consequences so that it's easier for us here. So then we have to think of who is it good for? Yeah, just us here in Europe or North America, or is it actually something that's good on a global level? So then walking over to the bridge, yes, it's possible for AI to help us to achieve or accelerate the sustainable development goals. Yes, it's possible for us to predict natural disasters, to try and mitigate the impacts of climate change. But at the same time, this technology, this infrastructure of artificial intelligence is somewhat of an unsustainable technology. So it begs the question, why use an unsustainable technology to facilitate sustainability? It seems like a bit of an oxymoron. And then when you stack up, like when you really start to dig into the environmental consequences, you see carbon emissions as a result of the training, the energy consumption for training, land usage, water usage, the mining for minerals that are required for the physical infrastructure, and the mining conditions. These are often not in Europe or North America. These are in other countries, other continents. The mining conditions are awful for the people working there, but also awful for the planet, contaminating the water and the soil. Then the physical infrastructure, contributing to electronic waste. Again, this is something that is shipped outside of our countries, and other people have to bear the burden for this innovation that we're talking about. So at what point can we say, yes, this is good, it's good for us, but we have to understand that there are other populations that will suffer the consequences of our innovation, and how do we take that into consideration? And that's what we do at my lab, at least, looking at these two branches: AI for sustainability, to accelerate the SDG goals, to tackle the climate crisis, and the sustainability of AI. And I think getting it right means bringing these two together, and then understanding how we can do that.
Great. Jochen, you as a representative of concerned citizens and also, with some economic background, what's your reaction to this? Does that make sense to you? Is that addressing concerns that you see as well?
Well, I think there is a lot of opportunity that I see in the first step, because I think labor productivity has not gone up in the last decade so much, and I think as there's a lot of labor shortage. First of all, I think if we can make everybody more powerful and more productive through better tools, I think that can help the economy. That can also help every single individual if they can contribute more. I think right now a lot of industries can't find people. And so if we can do more with just the existing people, I think that would already be a big help for everyone. That's one thing I hope for. I think for the further risks, I'm not the right person to speak, but I do see in terms of the data centers that you mentioned, that they cost a lot of resources, and that is very true. And I can say from a real estate point of view, we are planning several data centers now because the demand is rising, and these are very big buildings with a lot of resource going into them. So I understand that we have to think about this footprint as well when we build these centers, and I think they will be built. I think there's no question about that.
So while you have the mic, Jochen, let me ask you, when you talk to your family, to your friends, to your colleagues about AI, what's the biggest concern that comes up? The biggest realistic concern that really you have for, not maybe the far future, or maybe that is your biggest concern, but overall the thing that you are most worried about and they are most worried about?
Me and the people I speak to are most worried about is how fast this will all go. And this is something we don't know. And I think a good help, like I just mentioned, is good, but do we have the AGI, or when do we have it? Is it in the 30s, the 40s, or maybe the 20s? I think this is, so I think the world has been speeding up all along, and it's getting faster and faster, and a lot of people have fatigue from this technology, and we're getting tired of it, and worried about it, and scared about it, and there's a risk of more people left behind, and only very digital people who are keeping up with the speed of it, and I think that's a big risk of society if the speed keeps going up. So I think the speed of it all is the most worrying thing, and not knowing what's behind the other side.
So the speed, and then you said AGI, artificial general intelligence, sort of as a possible endpoint that, of course, Hollywood has told us a lot about, right? Hollywood tells stories. They don't make predictions of the future. We all know this, right? But they're stories that, of course, move us. Oliver, you are one of Germany's leading AI researchers, as are some other people on the stage and even more people in the audience. What do you have to say to that? Are you working on anything that Jochen, for instance, could think is related to AGI? Are you working on that?
I would say so, yeah. But let me first make some points. I think lots of good arguments were raised. I want to second what Amy is saying, that really, doing AI research in a responsible way is something that's very important. But on the flip side, I think it's the first time that humanity is developing a really new technology that could have humongous impact while asking these questions about sustainability and fairness from the get-go, right? So I think that's a sign of hope. Nobody asked about labor conditions when we introduced, the steam engine, right? Nobody asked about fossil fuel when we started having cars everywhere. But now, from the beginning, we're asking those questions, and it's maybe a sign that we're becoming adults as a species, right? So that's a positive thing. And then I would like to take the A away from AI for a second and talk about intelligence, right? Because we were asking, could we do without it? Is it an important technology? I think the I in itself goes to the very core of what it means to be biologically alive, or human, if you want to have that narrow focus. Answering that, to me, is one of the most under-researched and most important and central scientific and unanswered scientific questions. We know about the Higgs boson, we know black holes, and we know something about everything, but we know very little about what enabled us to understand the universe around us.
Do you think your friends, the top neuroscientists, would agree with that?
Do we have some here?
Not on the stage. Is there any top neuroscientists by any chance in the audience?
You mean they would argue that they understand the brain?
Yeah, I mean, you said it a little bit more provocatively, right? I mean, I don't think they would argue that they understand the brain, but then I think particle physicists also probably wouldn't argue that they understand all there is to understand about particle physics, right? Isn't that the nature of, any mature science, that we realize that we don't know everything?
Yeah. But I mean, particle physics, take the standard model of particle physics, has been validated again and again and again, and people are arguing that there must be something more, but it's proving to be true again and again. We don't have anything like that in AI. We have to say that, in AI, we're really at the beginning, where physics was 3,000, maybe even 5,000 years ago.
Absolutely, I agree with you there. I guess where I was going a little bit against, perhaps I was trying to needle you a bit, is that I think you very nicely spoke about intelligence rather than artificial intelligence. And do you really think it's true that we know so little about human and animal intelligence, that we really have no clue how it all works?
Well, no clue, obviously. Did I say that?
No.
That's a strong. I tend to say those things, so I wouldn't put it beyond me. That's a strong expression. But if you go to different disciplines, right? Take psychology, take neuroscience, take behavioral biology, take AI, take computer science, and you ask people, define intelligence, you're not going to get two answers that are the same.
That's right, yeah.
Right? So we are at that stage where the very subject that we study, we don't know what it is, which is a fantastic and exciting moment for a scientific discipline, right? But we have to acknowledge that we're not physics or biology, where it's clearly defined what our subject is.
That's brilliant. I have to go back to Jochen one more time. Sorry about that. But Jochen, you just heard one of Germany's and the world's top AI scientists say, I know very little about what we're actually doing there, right, Oliver? That's what you said. And actually, no, I stand behind that. I would say the same thing, right? And Amy, what would you say? I mean, you're not so much on the technical side, but you are looking at this very skeptically. Do you think that we really know very deeply what we're doing there when we're doing AI?
No, but...
Good,
no.
Let's just keep going. Alexander, you're the future here, right? You're on the ground in the trenches doing this sort of thing. Do you have a feeling that we know everything we should know about the kind of stuff that you're doing currently?
No, I think if we did, we wouldn't have a job anymore, right?
And Markus, what do you think?
I think the difference to biological systems, we actually do know exactly what happens in those transistors. This is up to some limit, this is quite well defined, sort of how they communicate. But then actually what they're doing in the end, we don't know.
Exactly, so how this all works together. That's a little bit like trying to describe the mixing of milk and coffee by looking at particle physics, which I think the particle physicists have been trying for a long time, and it's a big challenge for them, right? So Jochen, now I come to you. You hear all these people who looked very deeply into that, and I think Christian would say something similar, because you've spoken to many other leading experts in NRW. Or did you meet many people in NRW that say, I actually really know what's going on in AI, right? And I have confidence that I understand the limits, the risks, the potential?
How you put it is quite broad, yeah, and I would say yes.
No, Oliver put it kind of, he started this.
No, I think thinking about training a neural network which is based on matrix multiplication, I think this is quite well thought through what's happening there, yeah, how to train it. I think what we are discussing is the side effects around it. So what is with the results what we do, yeah, what is with the sustainability of what we do. I think there is certain things that we currently do not have a full picture of what is actually going on. And what I wanted to support you on this is actually the thing, and I was thinking about this the same way, is we are having these discussions how to create a trustworthy, sustainable AI while we develop it. And I think that's a good thing. That's also a strength that we have here in Nordrhein-Westfalen, in Germany, in Europe. Yeah? And a lot of people will develop it, be it in USA, be it in China, wherever. Yeah? And I think this is also what is very encouraging for me, that a lot of people, and you were mentioning the talks, I was just coming basically from a supervisory board meeting today and presenting AI stuff, and they were looking into the human aspects of it. Yeah, really, okay, what does it mean for us? Yeah. And that's what we want to understand and what we want to make right. And I think that's encouraging, and I think that's what makes me happy sitting here.
Absolutely. So no doubt about that. I think, even Oliver and I, who are both troublemakers, we of course acknowledge that we're all trying our best to understand these things. They're truly fascinating. I'm afraid that I wouldn't say that the supervised training of neural networks is 100% understood, right? Even there are many big open questions, I would say personally, and I see Oliver nodding there, right? And I see a few other people in the Alexander von Humboldt professor row there. So please keep it with Jochen, because I want to ask Jochen a very provocative question, right? Jochen, when you hear this now, right, the top AI scientists, and we're not playing theater for you, right? Of course, I'm trying to tease out something, but that's different, right? Does this make you concerned?
Yes, I'm concerned because we cannot, we as a public, have no idea what's happening in 6 months or 12 months.
Right.
So I would like to know, maybe from these world-class experts, I'm sure, as you said, there's a lot of unclear things for you about the future as well, but how long ahead would you be confident in your predictions? Would you know, I know exactly what's happening next 6 months or 3 months or 2 years?
That's a fun thing to say, so I think we should do a full round on this thing, and we're going to start with Markus over there.
No, I think.
What do you mean no? He asked how long advanced. Like, you can't say no. I mean, the next hour, I'm sure you can do. Come on, give us some time.
I think I'm not sure what happened the last month.
That's a very good point.
Because so much is happening in parallel worldwide, and I would claim I don't have the full picture of what happened in the last month.
Right. So you wouldn't make any confident prediction at all, is what you're saying?
I mean, I think it depends a bit on sort of how far the prediction is. Sort of, I would probably claim AGI is not available right now to anyone, and probably also not available in the next years, at least on a general scale. But sort of very far away predictions may be easier, but sort of detailed prediction is very difficult.
Good. I see a lot of questions from the audience coming in. I want to complete this round, but let's all please keep it very brief, right? So let's just try to stick to the question that Jochen asked: how far in advance are we comfortable predicting, right? And if I understand you correctly, you're saying I'm not comfortable making predictions about AGI, for example. You are confident making predictions about more detailed things close to your area of expertise, right?
I think I'm in the opposite way around. I could say like that AGI might be not around so in the next future, but like about details, what other people might already be existing, maybe in some company, it's very difficult to understand that, even like what maybe already has happened.
Very clear. Christian.
So I think what's going to be happening with the next 2 years in the digital world, with a lot more training, a lot of more energy resources going in there. So I think that's going to be tremendous. Yeah? And I think just had a picture of today from Midjourney version 1 to 5, and this is 1 year, and this is tremendous progress. So if you just take it 2 years from now, then whatever is coming from the digital world is, I don't know. The thing is, at some point in time, AI meets the real world, yeah, where we have paper files, where we have some stuff like a glass. Yeah? And I think within 2 years, not too much will actually change in this regard, maybe in 10 years. And I think that makes me confident that we have some time to manage how it really deeply affects our world. But in 10 years from now, there might be truly different changes.
Okay. Jochen asked the question, so you're not going to get to answer it, but Oliver, of course, will have something to say.
Yeah. I think, first of all, your question pertains to things that you need to be scared about, right? You're asking, how long can you tell us that we're safe?
Not just fear, but just anything. How far ahead are you confident to say anything, positive or negative?
Yeah, but I mean, how far can you predict the future for anything?
But he's not an expert on AI.
No, but on anything, whatever he's expert on. I mean, my point is you cannot predict the future, right? So I would say that things move much slower than the media makes us believe. And so I would feel, I think we're pretty safe when it comes to the fears that are raised around AI. Now, the thing that we need to be scared about is some breakthrough happening that really drastically changes the development, right? But I don't see that on the horizon, and so I think we're safe for, let's say, 20 years.
All right, There we go, 20. Alexander.
I think I agree with the general statement that it's more about the breakthroughs really that are really imposing us in front of challenges. But I'm really having a hard time making up a number. I mean, I could say like 1 week, 4 weeks, but I would probably say a couple of weeks is something you can safely do, but I don't know what someone does in their back room, so yeah.
Amy.
Yeah, so I can't really make predictions on, in terms of the technology. There's also the difference between academia and industry, as I think has been pointed out. But in terms of the AI ethics space, where's the future of this research going? I was on the European Commission high-level expert group for AI. We created the guidelines for trustworthy AI that led into the AI Act. This was back in 2018. And at that time, the concerns that the group was facing was biases. So biases that are prevalent in a society or a culture that are, make up the data set that's used to train the algorithm and whatnot, and then the algorithm is manifesting these biases. So this was one of the top concerns, or the lack of explainability or transparency if you're talking about machine learning. But then I think what's become clear is as society has more experience or exposure with the technology, new ethical issues arise. And there could be a reprioritization of ethical issues or just entirely new ones. And this is where sustainability comes into play. That now we see the massive data centers, the infrastructure that is required for this technology. Now we have this new set of environmental issues looking at future generations, right? So what kind of a legacy are we leaving to my children, to their children, when we continue to contaminate the planet? Or we're also looking at decolonizing AI and how there's a lack of other ethical traditions and voices as a part of the AI ethics community. And this is something that we're just touching the surface of right now. So in the future, in the next 2 to 5 years, I would say, we'll see a lot more of indigenous representation in how to design the technology in an inclusive way, or how to bring in philosophical traditions from Africa, like Ubuntu traditions, in how to understand the ethical issues in terms of the impact of AI on community or on our stewardship of the planet. And then also following up on what Oliver said in terms of understanding intelligence, what we're also seeing in the AI ethics space is this look at how intelligence is constructed for the AI world. That there's no consideration of nonverbal intelligence, that there isn't an appreciation for indigenous intelligence, which isn't recorded in the same way as us. So I think there'll be a lot of learning about the ethical issues. I don't know how to say a time. Okay, 2 to 5 years, I said, but we'll have more risks in 2 to 5 years.
So I find this very interesting what you're saying, Amy. I mean, of course, you and I also have something in common, which is that we spent a very significant time of our lives in Canada. You are actually from there, right? I lived for 20 years there, and I think indigenous issues is not something that in Germany are very much sort of on the radar, right? In Canada, that is very different, and in other countries, that's maybe something where in Germany we can also learn, right? Because it's part of sort of a diverse perspective on things. And so I'm really glad that you brought this up. But I actually want to ask you another question from the audience here, because I think it would be fun to hear your answer to this first, and then I'm sure others will want to chime in. Do you think the data protection rules in Europe, which you just mentioned, not just data protection, but also let's take the AI Act in there, right? And you said some of your work advising the Commission has led groundwork for that, which of course is awesome, somehow hinders the growth of AI. And then the person who asked this says, I believe AI would make huge strides if data protection rules and the AI Act are less stringent for researchers. What do you say about that?
So I hear that a lot, actually, about how ethics stifles innovation. First of all, there are certain innovations that could use stifling. I don't think it should necessarily be seen as a bad thing when we're talking about autonomous warfare, for example. So that's one side of the story. The other, though, is, myself and Vincent Müller, another Alexander von Humboldt professor, we share a similar approach to ethics and its role in the design development of artificial intelligence. And that's not just to say, no, we can't do this. It's to say, what are the values of doing it? How can we achieve those values, but perhaps in a different way than we're looking at it right now? So when I talk about sustainable AI, it's not, okay, let's shut down AI entirely, but it's how can we create or use renewable energy sources for the data centers? Or how can we have the most efficient model possible so that we're decreasing the energy consumption? So I don't necessarily think that legislation or ethics, for that matter, needs to be seen as something that is a wet blanket or stifling innovation. In fact, the opposite. It could, I think this is where innovation really comes in. We say we want technology that protects the values of our citizens, and we still want the innovation. So look for the green IT. Look for a way to do both. That's what I would consider to be innovation. Otherwise, then you have a situation like in the United States where it's a Wild West, and you have certain states in the US that they're saying, uh-oh, we let things go too far. Now we have the Brussels effect. Now we're going to take what is in the AI Act or the GDPR, and we're going to use that in our state because we realized we've let it go. So I push back strongly on that for the variety of reasons that I just suggested.
Excellent. Alexander, you're one of these people whose research is on fire. You're doing great stuff. This kind of regulation that the person from the audience asked about, that Amy commented on, this may very well soon start to restrict your research. How do you feel about that? And how do you feel about what Amy just said on this topic?
I think that the stance that Amy made is exactly the right one, that you want to have a solution that kind of brings the world together. Like, having no legislation is probably not a good idea. But on the other hand, having too strict of a regulation is probably also not a good idea. For example, if you take this example of cookies in a computer browser, right? Most people just click them away now and accept everything anyway. I think that didn't really do much for us in the ESA, although it was a nice idea. Exactly. So I think it's definitely something where we have to find a good balance. And I think it's super important that the EU, for example, is really talking to leading experts in the field when designing these things. But yeah, we'll see how this will really impact our research. And in the end, I think it can be good. Let's see how this plays out.
So I'm curious, let's do a little experiment. Some people here in the room, we have lots of Alexander von Humboldt professors and other experts, and then I think many people who have an interest in this from various perspectives. So maybe let's just see a show of hands, but let's be good citizens and good scientists about it. So let's not show our hands unless we feel we can raise it on a reasonably informed basis, okay? So let's abstain if we feel that we don't have enough information. So I wonder who here in this room, including on the stage, thinks that the current version of the AI Act, whatever you know about it, is sort of putting Europe on the right track for doing the right things in AI in a way that is good for our societies and good for our economy.
Oh, that's really tough. Sorry, can I?
Yeah, no, but I just want to hear. Maybe you will see in a moment. Let's just try this, right? So who feels that we're on the right track there? And who has, okay, well, there's a few people here on stage. Anyone? Yeah, very good. So that's great. I see a smattering. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's great, and good experts, right? So who has serious concerns? Who feels that we're not on the right track? And if this thing, it's in the trilogue stage, it's very close to becoming law. Who feels that we're in for biggish trouble if this becomes law the way it currently is, right? We're not talking about something drastic happening in the trilogue, which currently doesn't look like it's happening, I think. So who has serious concerns about that? You can vote twice if, yeah. and the rest doesn't know, right? So I think what we're seeing is that there is a law going to come into effect that I think will affect all of us here, right? And all of you there as well. And my point is that a few people have an opinion on that. Some people have two opinions on it. But a lot of us feel we don't know enough about it. I find that disturbing. So I think one of the things that from the Alexander von Humboldt Summit we wanted to do today is send messages out also to politicians. So I would propose that perhaps our first message is we should be disturbed that leading experts and interested citizens like we have here feel they don't know enough to even have an opinion on this topic that's clearly going to shape our future. To me, that feels we're not ready to enact this legislation, to be honest with you, right? But maybe, Oliver, you look like you want to maybe push back on this.
Well, I think it's a very interesting point, and I think you're right that we're legislating without knowledge, and that cannot be good. It would be a huge coincidence if the laws that we put in place without understanding are the right laws, right? So I think it's a really serious point of concern. But I think in some sense it's us who causes this, because, I mean, why are you afraid of AI? I think it's our fault, right? I mean, I think we've done a poor job in making you feel safe. So politicians are alarmed because citizens are alarmed that we're building something that's going to really change the way they live. And so politicians need to react to
that. But Oliver, we're building something that's going to, I mean, you said this yourself, we're building things that change the way people live and work, right? But do you think, let me just push back a little. Do you think that all these people who now didn't have an opinion, or those that feel the regulation maybe doesn't go far enough, right? Do you feel that they should not be concerned or less concerned?
But so let's take the automobile as an example, right? Between, I don't know, the first Model T coming off the conveyor belt and there being comprehensive regulation regulating how to use it. But how much time passed? Was it, I mean, were traffic laws in existence when cars were invented? Obviously not.
Yes.
Or seatbelts.
Or seatbelts, or any kind of security, right? So somehow, so far, with technologies, and I'm not saying that's good, I'm just observing, right? With technologies, we've waited till the technology was mature enough for us to know what it actually means.
But Oliver, excuse me, you were the one who said earlier, and I thought it was an excellent point, by the way, that this time around, the difference is that from the very get-go, we do things right and think about stuff, didn't you?
Yeah, think about stuff, but thinking about stuff and legislating stuff are two different things.
Okay, that's totally fair.
Right.
So I want to briefly give the word to Jochen here, because Jochen, you said earlier one of the things you're concerned about is this acceleration, right? Oliver made a very good point, right? And I think actually your example was beautifully chosen. When the automobile came around, I always forget how long it took for the first person to be killed by it, but it wasn't very long, right? Nonetheless, right, we were quite happy to experiment with this, right? You are saying this is going way, way faster, and it's accelerating as we speak. So do you think that's a fair comparison to say in the past with these kind of technological developments, we took our time to have a close look, and then after a period of seeing what could go wrong, we legislated? Do you think we could do it the same way here, or do you feel uncomfortable with that? Just because of what you said earlier, I'm asking.
No, I feel uncomfortable with that. So I would like us to think about the seatbelts at the beginning this time, because I think potentially it's a bigger invention than the car.
Yes.
And maybe you can put the seatbelts in later. So.
But hang on, I know that you want to respond, but you're not just saying let's think about it earlier. You say let's put the seatbelts in earlier and let's actually give fines if they're not put in. Is that what you're saying, or do I misunderstand?
That's what I'm saying.
So, and then Oliver, it's different from what you're pushing for, isn't it?
No. So first of all, I was just making an observation, right? And I think we should think about seatbelts and should put them in, because seatbelts don't harm anybody. They're a good idea. Right? Let's use good ideas, but I mean, so passing a law for data protection that we don't know whether it actually helps or hurts or what it does, that's a bad idea. We don't put random stuff into cars in the hope that it helps. A seatbelt, I understand, it's a good idea. absolutely. Put it on right away. I totally agree. But would you agree with putting, I don't know, radioactive something just because you think, I don't know, some crazy safety feature that we don't even know if it helps?
No.
Okay, hang on for a second. Sorry, this is super fascinating. I'm also looking a little bit that we only have 13 minutes left, and I have at least one question from the audience I want to ask. However, Markus has been patiently waiting. Markus, please, but keep it brief.
Maybe just an idea in this direction that maybe we have to be more agile in this environment. I mean, it sort of connects to what was just said, that with the seed balls it was clear what to do. With AI, lots of things are not clear what is the best rules. So I think the problem is whatever is in this act, it will have to change, and probably has to change quickly for any new innovation which is coming around. So that will be the tricky part. How can legislation be fast and catch up?
Can I please add something, Holger?
If you add something, you're going to
It'll be super fast, I promise.
All right, super fast.
But this speaks to the point about how we should have ethicists who are working as part of the design team so that we don't learn about a seatbelt 20 years later. We understand, there is a need for a seatbelt here, and we can work together to come up with solutions. And also the seatbelt thing, like, yes, it was definitely beneficial. I threw out the seatbelt idea, but it was designed for the male body and not necessarily like the multigender. And this is why we need ethics to think about even the seatbelts. Yeah.
Good. So I'm sure we could spend another half hour talking about this topic, but there is another question which has sort of collected more and more votes here, and I think you guys want to discuss it as well. So I'm going to read it. It's a two-part question, and I'm going to suggest to you, although you're free in what you really do, that we focus on the first part. The question reads, how far behind is Europe really in AI compared to the United States and China? What exactly are we missing compared to them? That's part one. And part two is, why are no big companies in Europe investing in AI in large scales? My suggestion is that we don't talk much about the second, because I think that would be an evening-filling conversation that goes very much about what's different between the European economical system and the one in the States. And I'm not sure that we have the right kind of expertise on stage here, although maybe we do. So if you burn to answer that question, please do. But meanwhile, I would like to start actually with Markus, but keep it brief, and then have Oliver add to that. How far behind are we? Can we catch up? Could we catch up if we determined, let's say at the European level, right? Because the question is about Europe. Could we catch up? Could we maybe even surpass in certain areas, in interesting areas? And what exactly are we missing? So Markus first, please.
It's a very difficult question. I think there's always a chance to catch up. I think it also depends a bit on which part of AI, especially I think maybe this refers mainly to the deep, large models. I think it would be hard to catch up. I think it actually relates to the second part of the question, and about that maybe how things in the US work, that maybe companies first break things and then fix it later. And so I think there's quite a different mentality. So I think maybe in Europe we want to first do it right, and maybe in some part of Silicon Valley they first want to do it somehow and be the first rather than do it right. And one could argue what is better, but I think that's part of the reason why things are ahead.
But Markus, you make an excellent point, yet I feel maybe that's a little unfair, because I mean, you very carefully said some companies in Silicon Valley. I can think of at least one that has a very different approach, right? A noticeably different approach to let's break things quickly and then fix them. And nonetheless, they're one of the most valuable companies on the planet with their, we don't have to be first in everything, we just have to get it right and make it so that people like using it. How do you reconcile those things?
But they're not maybe the leader in AI.
Are they?
Which company are we talking about?
We're talking about Apple. Some of my former students work there. They're saying they're all in AI, but they're not talking about it the same way others do.
We're talking about Facebook, move fast and break things.
No, we're talking about this contrast, that there are American companies, I think SpaceX also, which you wouldn't also think of first of as an AI company, yet, their autonomous rocketry wouldn't work without fairly advanced AI, certainly, right? And they also believe in this move fast and break things. All I'm saying is, and you made this point too, right, explicitly by your choice of words, not all companies in the States want to move fast and break things, and some of the ones that don't are super successful, right? So maybe that isn't the only way to succeed in the States or anywhere, is where I'm coming. Oliver, what's your perspective on this? Can we catch up? Could we if we wanted to?
Sure. I think everything is possible, but I mean, who's ahead in a race depends on whether the direction in which we're running is changing, right? So I think if you look at science over decades, centuries, it's not that one view of any particular subject has survived forever, right? I mean, it's called a paradigm change. So we're in one particular race right now, or we're racing into one particular direction, and I think it's fair to say that we're, not ahead. But I think even if the race continues in that direction, it is possible to catch up. But I think the more clever thing is to change the direction of the race, and to basically anticipate what could be the next paradigm that is going to scare you about AI.
I'm sure the members of the media here will have a blast quoting you on this, Oliver. But
that was a joke. Members of the media, please.
Hang on for a second there. I want to just go a little bit into that. You said many interesting things here. So changing the direction of the race, that's brilliant. Amy, in Canada, we have a phrase to that, right? There's the very fast game of hockey, much faster than European football or soccer, right? Much faster, so fast that even with enhancements on the videos, you can't see the puck, right? And how does the saying go? If you skate to where the puck is, you'll never succeed. You have to skate to where the puck is going to be, right? So, Oliver, I think you are saying we could skate to where the puck is, and with enough effort, we would get there, correct? But you're saying let's go to where the puck is going to be, which is of course difficult to predict, but sounds like a very reasonable thing. So Amy, do you think that would be the right thing to do?
Yeah, well, it's also, I like this idea of changing the race, but it's conceptualizing like what is the goal of the race? And so if we want to compete with China, with the United States in terms of getting products to market the fastest, this is a race to the bottom. We're talking about jumping over human rights. We're talking about breaking any kind of concept of privacy whatsoever. If the race is about innovating while at the same time maintaining human rights, maintaining the values that democratic societies have, then we're winning the race. That we are literally winning the race. Then if we're talking about opportunities for, looking for where the puck is in the future, this is where I would suggest sustainability and green infrastructure is, and Germany could have a role being the thought leaders, the front runners, and all of the other countries are then coming to Germany to say, how did you do it? How do we do it?
But Amy, let me push you a little bit on this. So, I'm an AI researcher too, so sometimes I get asked questions. The other day, I got a request from the Chancellor of Germany's Future Council, right? And one of the very pointed questions they had, and by the way, I thought they had great questions, so I was very reassured that at that level, the subject is not just on the radar, we know this, right? But that people ask very smart questions about it. And one of the really smart questions I thought was the following, which I think goes very much in the direction that you were hinting at least. They said, well, there are some people who say that rather than trying to participate in the race, where you say we should change directions, what we should really do is accept that our AI technology is going to come from the States and China, and what we do is build on this stuff and build around this stuff and use it responsibly and just have that be the direction. And they asked me, do you think that this is what we should do, right? So Amy, what do you think? Is that what we should do?
Yeah, so I would say this also has to do with how you understand ethical risks and if you think that there's a Band-Aid for them after. If we're talking about the labeling of data happening in these data farms where you have refugees in refugee camps who are sitting there labeling data, or prisoners in prisons who are doing this so that it's super cheap, we can have our machine learning algorithms for autonomous vehicles and whatnot as cheap as possible. Is there a Band-Aid for that afterwards? Can we then use it responsibly? It depends on how you think about what is responsible AI. I would shift and say, yes, they will be first to market, and we can learn from their examples or their mistakes. But we also have, with the GDPR, if companies wanted to have access to the consumer base in Europe, they had to comply with GDPR. So it can be the same for AI in China or in the United States. If you want to have access to our consumer base in Europe, you have to comply with the AI Act. And if that means we don't have access to their AI, well, then we create our own. Don't we also want to create new kinds of technologies, or do we want to just copy the crap that other countries have made?
So that is a beautiful statement and a beautiful bridge. I think, Christian, you've been wanting to say something for a little bit, so just in a second. Because, I like the way you said this, right? You said, do we just want to copy the crap that others are doing, right? I mean, some of this crap is being woven right now into the fabric of economy and society in this country, right? I mean, I won't ask the question here because it's not the right forum, but I think if we brought a whole bunch of people from innovative industries together and asked them, how many of you are currently seriously exploring, meaning putting people hours into it, the use of ChatGPT or BART or any equivalent for the benefit of your business, I think we would see a lot of hands going up, right? That's the crap that you're talking about, correct, right? And so I like when you said, shouldn't we build our own? That's just better. And that could also be one of these directional changes, Oliver, that you are alluding to, right? But in order to build our own that's better and maybe has the seatbelts in from day one, don't we have to have the ability to also kind of build at a similar level as they're currently building? Or can we just leapfrog that stage altogether? And now, Christian, I would really be interested in your perspective because you travel around NRW, you talk to industry. So you can tell me whether I'm sadly mistaken in thinking that they're all sitting there thinking about how to leverage this for their businesses. Maybe they're much more conservative. But you can probably also tell me whether in academia, sort of broadly, beyond what we have here on stage, whether at least in this state, you feel that there are more people who think, sure, we can just leapfrog that and build something better and different, or whether there is a feeling we actually need to be able to compete with that in order to do something even better. What do you think?
So first of all, it's always a bit hard to add to a discussion when some of those arguments have been taken already. But what I really think is, in certain dimensions, we are not beyond the race. So usually I would say European AI research, for what we think is right, we are very, and sometimes even ahead of the curve. The question is, do we want to copy ChatGPT, etc.? I personally don't think that makes a whole of sense because there are some reasons that Amy brought up, there's some other reasons, and it's not even brought up by research, it's brought up by the private funded here, Apples, Amazons, etc. So I think why should we copy something which we cannot even copy? So if I travel around, people would say, yeah, I would like to have a large language model, but I want to understand how I can use my data safely. I want to understand how it tends to bias. Yeah? And I was also discussing today the labeling question and who is actually teaching ChatGPT to make reasonable answers. Yeah? The poorly paid guys somewhere in Africa. And they say, we don't want that. Yeah? So what we have the chance to build something around which people actually want because we have a different North Star where we want to develop technology. And I think what we have here, Alexander from Humboldt, RWTH, Lamar, whatsoever we have a lot of great research already. What I think is for us most pressing problem is that we do not have enough private investments. So if you look into the numbers, you were asking that, so if $53 million or 48 the past year is spent in US in private investments in AI, and we in Germany have 2. Yeah, then obviously the question of do we get the research that we have into application, into reasonable application? That's where we are falling behind. And still I agree we should not here play the ChatGPT race, but I think for what we have in our home country, industry, medicine, whatever we have, there is a lot of applications where I would wish we have more investments and where we make it with all the stuff we said in a reasonable way workable.
Right. So I said earlier that the Alexander von Humboldt professors, they met actually for an hour and a bit before this to sort of exchange some ideas to see how diverse the set of opinion amongst us is and what are the points that we agree on. And I'm trying very carefully not to misrepresent things, but you're all here, so if I accidentally do that, you can now raise your hand and you can chime in. I think one of the things that we were all quite convinced about is that if we really want to, we can catch up in Europe and we can do better, and this race is anything but lost. Even when it comes to the core technology, right? So that seemed to be one thing that we could all agree on, or did I read that wrong earlier? I'm just looking at my colleagues there. So I see a lot of nodding, and maybe that's something that the public is also interested to hear from us, right? I believe, Oliver, we do realize that would take an investment that's much bigger than the one that we're currently seeing. And what Christian is now sort of raising, you didn't ask the question that way, but one could ask the question that way, is who should bring this investment, right? Is that something that if industry doesn't do it, then industry needs to be stimulated to do it? Or is that something where we feel because the European way is maybe not the American way and not the Chinese way, here the public hand has more to do, right? Maybe if we want AI research in the public sphere, also exposed to the full scrutiny that comes with spending research dollars that ultimately come from taxpayers, right? Research euros in this case. Maybe then also there need to be more of those, right? Oliver, what do you think there? What's the right way for Europe? Is it the case that if industry can't be persuaded or incentivized to invest, then we're doomed? Or do you think there is another way for Europe that's a little less dependent on high-risk investment, which I would say, as somebody who's lived in Canada, which is not a risk-loving culture compared to the States, right? But I would say Canada is less risk-adverse than Germany is, right? So even there, I would say, yeah, Germany is a risk-adverse society, and that's not changing really quickly, and that also has some advantages, by the way, right? And many other European societies are risk-adverse compared to the United States, Silicon Valley mentality as well, and I'm not sure whether we can fix that or change this quickly, or whether it even needs fixing. Oliver, what do you think?
Yeah, let me clarify something that maybe was ambiguous what I said earlier. I think we need to take on this race, for sure, as Germany, as Europe, because what happens in this race is that actually something gets produced, and those are products and technology that kind of becomes an assumption for even changing the direction of the race at a later point, right? So I think we cannot afford to completely give up a whole sector of this technology. We must run this race, and we must try to compete. And also going back to what Amy said, I think that if we believe, and I agree with that we have a position in Europe to have a better AI, right, than maybe coming from elsewhere, although but I think we should strive for that no matter what other people are doing, then this better AI should be competitive, with others, because otherwise people are going to buy the bad AI. And so I think, just being the best in ethics won't help us. We need to have the best products that everybody wants to buy, and we need to be the best in ethics.
Exactly.
And so under no circumstances did I mean to imply that we shouldn't run this race and try to win it. I'm just saying that there's a meta race going on, right? Where in the long run, the direction will change, and we should be the ones setting that new direction.
That sounds... Sorry. I think Alexander was next, unless you have something that you feel...
It was just a quick thing, sorry. That I didn't mean that we should just be the best in AI ethics. I mean, obviously we should be, and we're doing a good job.
But Oliver was careful with this, right?
Yeah.
He said we should be the best in that and in AI ethics, right?
Yeah. So I was just like for the record of this, I wasn't saying let's just be the best in that, but also the technology. But the ethics can help us to build the best technology.
And I was just going to go out on a limb and say not just Amy would agree with that, but I think all of the Alexander von Humboldt professors who were here today and who are here today would agree with that. Am I correct there, or do we have anybody who disagrees? In which case I would run out with a microphone and get an explanation. So that's also something to take note of, right? So I think we have agreement that there is a race, we can win the race. We may not want to win that race, but change the direction in a way that's better for our society. Part of that direction is AI ethics, part of it is sustainability, part of it is perhaps also a more inclusive and diversity of perspectives approach. Where I would add, it's interesting, right? I mean, we tend to think Europe versus overseas. We tend to, for example, lump Canada and the US into North America, where in reality, from a diversity perspective, Canada has much more of a focus on this than the US does. And so I would say, as somebody just like Amy, who knows both cultures quite well, and I'm sure there are other people here, for instance, know the Japanese culture well, or the Korean culture, Australian culture, right? That there are many other cultures and economies in the world that probably would appreciate the kind of approach that we're taking in Europe to AI over what's currently on offer, right? And I think there are even companies in the United States that not only appreciate that, but actively push in this direction, right? So we shouldn't be too simplistic and say this is all bad and going in a direction that's incompatible with us. But yeah, some of it is not up to our standards, right? Excellent. Alexander, you wanted to add something to this.
Yeah, I think considering the importance that AI already has in our lives, and I think it's only going to increase in the future, the technology is way too important to give it up in a sense, the race, and just say, okay, I mean, we just take whatever, I don't know, the USA or maybe China's doing, and then we try to put the seatbelts in later, and if we're lucky that works. I think we really need to be at the core of designing these things to make sure that they're designed in a way that really fits the way we want them to be here in Europe. And I think it's also part of the job of the politicians to make sure that this is actually possible to a certain extent, because otherwise, I mean, what will happen? We've seen that to a certain degree during the Corona crisis, right? If we rely too much on certain other countries, right, with medicine products, and then China having trouble delivering these things, or maybe not wanting to deliver these things, or like fossil fuels not being delivered for a certain time, I think we shouldn't be that dependent on other large nations, because that, of course, bears its dangers.
Indeed. And I just realized I made a tragic mistake. I thought we should be done here at 6 o'clock, but I peeked at my schedule and it says we actually have until 6:30. So if people fed me the right schedule, then we still have a little bit of time to debate. And I see a lot of smiling there, which I interpret as saying you're not bored yet. I also don't see people leaving. So we have time to discuss a few more questions. And the one question that I would want to put on the table right now, in part because I'm cheating a bit. I know that this is a question that, of course, we discussed also before in the round of Alexander von Humboldt professors, but now we have a broader table here and we can hear some different perspectives, is the one that the Future Council asked to me, right? Which is, if you could give advice to the German government, which has just decided recently to ramp up very significantly the public investment in AI, what concrete things would you tell them should be done, right? And so I know that we have a few ideas there. But before that, Markus, you sound like you really wanted to say something before we get into this. Is that right?
I mean, maybe there's another aspect which we didn't touch on. We sort of tried to distinguish like Germany versus US and so on. But maybe there's also this aspect, public science versus industry.
Absolutely.
I think that's sort of another dimension where sort of lots of things are maybe right now in industry and in the private sector, and they're not actually accessible by the scientific community, independent if it's in Germany or if it's in the US. I mean, the big universities there, even like the best universities in the world, they have the same problem as universities here. Mm-hmm. They're lacking behind in compute. So it's not just Germany versus US, it's also like industry versus public research.
So thank you very much, Markus, for making this point, because there is a question from the audience. It was actually asked 32 minutes ago, so we're a little behind in the queue. Where do you see the future of AI in terms of the relationship between academia and industry? It seems as if some companies in the AI space are less and less interested in sharing their findings, which is exactly what you're saying, right? So let me just be a little bit provocative here. Personally, as somebody with a stake on the research side on this, right? I mean, I think all of us here have made our decision to work in the public sector for public sector salaries rather than in the private AI sector for private AI sector salaries. There are, of course, some of our colleagues who made the other choice. So, I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to say, I think this is a real problem. And the way I see it as a problem is if I imagine a world 5 to 10 years from now where for a young researcher or a student to really get to the cutting edge of AI, they can't learn that any longer at any publicly funded institution in the world. They need to go into industry and sign NDAs and be willing to not talk about the work they're doing. And that disturbs me greatly. Markus, does that disturb you as well? Is this the direction in which you were going?
Yeah, I think that's sort of very similar. I mean, I think there's sort of the two sides, the data aspect and the sort of the knowledge aspect. And I think the tricky part is with industry changes very quickly. And right now, lots of the AI companies are still quite public about what they're doing, at least with the models and so on. But this can change very quickly in one direction or the other. And there's sort of very little control the public has, especially if it's then also in different countries.
And to the point, OpenAI, the company that has dominated part of the race that we spoke of, right? It started as a non-profit with a declared goal of being open and transparent. And, I guess they're not so open and transparent any longer. In fact, I find it strange that they can still call themselves OpenAI. It's kind of a bit of a joke, actually. Amy.
I just wanted to add something to, you were talking about signing NDAs and working on cutting edge AI technology. It's the same in the AI ethics space, that you can make the choice to stay in academia where you can present your findings openly. But if you, as an AI ethicist, go into a company like DeepMind, Google, whatnot, you are not talking about the issues and the concerns that are raised. And that, I think, is incredibly problematic, that we have hundreds of AI ethicists who are working at big tech and cannot talk about the issues that big tech is confronted with. And this is not a good thing.
And then, of course, we have some who broke their chains, so to speak, right?
Yeah, and get
got out
fired.
of there, get fired,
Yeah.
or also resign, right? There's also examples for that. Then talk about their experience, and what we hear is not reassuring, right?
Yeah.
And it's also not reassuring in terms of industry regulating itself. Christian, do you see this differently? Do you think we're just a bunch of academics who are seeing the world a little bit too black in that respect? And let's not talk about German industry. I understand fully well that this is different, right? So, but we all know what we're talking about here, really. So how do you see that?
No, personally, obviously, I love German industry. For what has just been said about the US industry, that was my private investment statement. I think it's dangerous, if very small and few companies spend as much money as some countries in the world have for the entire yearly salary or budget for paying for social security, etc. So if this is the amount of money, then this is scary, because a lot of these companies can actually buy out countries. And this needs to be said. So they are so powerful. It's not only about AI, they can buy out a lot of things. And this makes then the whole discussion, okay, I have the greatest GPU cluster, you come here, you have the best research. So, and OpenAI said, okay, yeah, we do not publish anymore on GPT-4 because there was some ambiguous reason. But like the reason was somehow, obviously, there's some commercial stuff that they want to protect. I understand that, but it's not OpenAI. Now, that makes me a bit afraid that if we want to get into this race, we will simply not have the money, and I think it's just not the right race. So I think we should do the right things, build on stuff that we really want to control. Read industrial foundation models, always having Amy on stage, looking into the sustainability aspects of what we do there. But at the end, that scares me in a sense, because my son is talking to me a lot of stuff from YouTube, from Facebook, etc. Most of the stuff not has any relation to AI. What's happening in big social media stuff is scary, because they have so much power. Twitter has so much power, they can turn votes. Now, then the question comes on regulation. So I don't want to make...
But Christian, sorry, I mean, I have to go in there. You're saying that has nothing to do with AI. As an AI expert, I would say that has everything to do with AI, because the algorithms that control what people see on X, formerly Twitter, or on Facebook are AI algorithms. They are carefully engineered AI algorithms that are meant to maximize something that some people find deeply disturbing, namely the exposure of other people to certain ideas. Isn't that right? Would you disagree?
Let me be more concrete. So a lot of the things do not necessarily need AI to be scary. With AI, with the application of these algorithms, it gets worse. It gets way more worse.
Right.
And that's what we agree on. So,
okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. You're totally right. I mean, I would add to this, it's getting way more worse. You said the same word, but I'm just going to put a bit more emphasis on this, right? Excellent. So I am curious. Please, disagreement is always good.
So I really think I see things rather differently. So I think that the advent of AI comes also with a complete democratization of education. And I don't think that the interest of these large companies is to, I mean, their interest is to educate the whole world so that they can then hire the best people. So I think there's an alignment of interests in terms of education. I also don't think it's surprising or strange that companies want to protect their intellectual property. And I think AI is a technology where that has happened to the very least degree in any, given the economical potential of AI, there have been very little patents and very little restrictions, and most of the stuff, is downloadable. And if you remember, for example, AlphaFold, this deep learning software that predicts the structure of proteins. That was by a company, and it was closed, and they were kind of reluctant to share the details, but people just went and rebuilt it, and now it's publicly available. So I think there's a lot of democracy in AI, both in terms of education as well as in sharing the intellectual.
I have to disagree.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so
bring it on.
Okay. Okay, so when you're talking about the democratization of the technology, and like you can go and replicate the model. So I spent some time. I work closely with the University of Ghana over in Ghana, and obviously, and. So, I was there with my team, and we were talking about sustainable AI, and they're like, "Oh, that sounds great, Amy, but, we don't have enough energy to have our street lights on at night. Only certain street lights can be on." And so when we're talking about, we're saying, like, what can we do to be competitive? We're in still a very privileged position, yeah? They explained to me that when they want to create a model or an app for maintaining a certain lifestyle, if you have diabetes, for example, of course, you need to train for accuracy. They don't have the energy or the compute power to do that. They have to go to big tech and say, can we please? And of course, big tech says, yeah, of course, but we get the data, yeah? So in terms of the democratization of the technology, I push back. Oh, wait, and the other thing, the patents. So yeah, big tech wants their patents, totally get it, but there's also this conversation, is it DALL-E, the one that takes text and turns them into images? Yeah, about how many images and artworks were used to actually train this model. How many times did they get permission, consent, or pay the artists whose work they took to train the algorithm? So yes, they want their patents, but they're also relying on the work from so many other people. Absolutely. Without even recognition.
Absolutely, and this is happening, right? People are, so that's your second point, I think this debate is happening. Regarding your first point, sorry.
Democratization of technology.
Yeah. So I totally agree. Right. This is a process, but a second wave of these technologies is to make them less data hungry, less power hungry. Right. To facilitate training of these large networks. It's going to happen on your cell phone, right? And in that moment, it's going to be...
But it's ridiculous paternalism and colonialism again. We are taking away their digital sovereignty, and we're saying we're going to create the more energy efficient models, and then you can use it. Then you can have it, but you can have it if we get all of your data.
Well, I don't want that data, but...
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but Google does. But
Google does,
right?
Yeah, Facebook does.
But now we're going back, right? We need to run that race, so it's not just Google.
Right.
Right?
That is an excellent point. I want to connect to something, I've seen you, Alex, so I want to connect to something that you said earlier, though, because I found it very insightful. And that is that we shouldn't expect from industry to do certain things because it's against their incentives. You didn't use these words, but I think that was the argument you were making, right? So in industry, their job is to create, first of all, to maintain jobs for their employees. In the US, certainly, it's to make money for their shareholders. That's actually even the law, right? And then to not break the law and too obvious things to not get into trouble. That's basically it, right? And of course, they create value for society, tremendous value for society by doing these things. There's no question, right? There are entrepreneurial risks that nobody would take if there weren't powerful incentives in the short and medium term, right? Where I would push back a little bit is that some of the issues that we're discussing here, I'm not sure, you speak of the direction of the race, can be addressed by racing for short and medium term benefit and profit. I think it's fair that industry goes that direction because that's in their DNA, that's what they're supposed to do. And admittedly in Germany a little less so because we have a different view on what society could expect from industry in return for the freedom to do certain things, right? More so than in the States, for example. But fundamentally, Oliver, wouldn't you say that if we really have our eyes on far goals, and I think we should and need to, that is a mistake to rely on industry to help us get there because it's against their built-in incentives?
I think now we're talking politics and ideology, sort of, right? And that's a...
No, we're talking rational thought. I mean, don't you think that industry has a set of incentives? I thought you hinted at this yourself. Yes. That makes it very hard for industry to make sure that in the long term we're doing the right thing.
So again, it goes back to us considering really all consequences of the technology development right now. And so, you know, I think governments are waking up to the fact after decades of unchecked capitalism, right, which basically gave free rein to these individual corporations, because optimizing their local profit kind of optimized, at least we thought, or they thought for a while, optimized society's benefit, right? But then we realized that there are all these externalities, like, the environment, that people disregarded, and now the government is putting laws in place to internalize these externalities. So corporations have to pay. I mean, first of all, they should not ruin the environment, and if they did, they have to pay for it. I think we need the same thing for AI, right? Because there is, as the speed of the development increases, this long-term versus short-term payoff and finding the right balance between them is going to become much more relevant.
Exactly.
And so I think that we need scientists to be involved in those political processes to be able to fine-tune.
And when you say scientists, just so I understand what you mean. No. What I mean to ask you is, do you mean people with rigorous scientific training in AI, regardless of whether they work for industry, for government, for universities, or do you have something more specific in mind?
Well, I think in the end, it's a question of, your question, how far out can we predict something, right?
Yes.
And I think we need to ask those people that plausibly have the biggest horizon.
Right.
So that we can make the best trade-off between short-term and long-term goals.
Would you think that in order to have those people be able to make good predictions and be up to their game, we need strong universities, for example, where there isn't pressure to focus on short-term and medium-term? I mean, you're still at a university. You could work in many other places, right? Is that where you're going with this?
People are going to think, we studied this. Of course, yes, we do. We do need super strong universities, absolutely. And I think, in Germany, that could be one of the strengths that we have to put into this race, that we do have an open, public, freely available, good university system that we can tune to be able to compete with the big Stanfords and MITs of the world.
So here's something interesting, and then over to you, Alex. I work a bit with the European Commission on AI, right? And people in the Commission, they tend to be very proud that they invested 100 million euros 100 million euros into AI research in the form of huge networks, and I'm part of these networks. They're great, right? Where does the money go? It goes to PhD students mostly, which is a brilliant investment. Quite honestly, I mean, let's not ridicule that's great, right? But there's 100 million euros, and they think that is a big investment. Sure, I mean, for you and me, 100 million is still a pretty big money, right? If we had worked for Google, maybe 100 million wouldn't be so. Anyway, but where I'm going with this is the Alexander von Humboldt Foundation, which ultimately the money comes from the German government, has invested into the people in this room basically as much, right? With the stipulation that it all goes into the German university system, right? So I always find that an interesting contrast, right? What the whole of the EU puts into AI research essentially equals what the German government has put into the people in this room and the universities where they are. So the conclusion I draw from us is two, we are very lucky. The second thing that I draw from this is there should be more investment of that kind, because whenever I talk to not only you, but also our students and the students that learn from these students, it seems there is exactly the kind of payoff that you see. Is that something that you feel the same way? Maybe Amy.
I would also just say, like, a shout out to the European Union or the European Commission. They have so many things that they need to allocate their funds for, right?
But come on, Amy. AI is the biggest, most transformative thing that there is, right? I mean, I thought we all agree on that. Or are you saying that you know, in reality, there is 25 other things that are just as important and deserve 100 million euros.
They're also trying to tackle poverty. They're dealing with wars. They're dealing with, I mean, if you think about biodiversity and genetically modified organisms, quantum computing. I mean, I'm not saying, I love AI.
So you're happy with the fact that the investment in AI is at the same scale as in all of these other things?
That's not what I said. I said shout out to the European Commission that they have so many priorities and so many things. So maybe it's not, like, yes, we should definitely ask for more money, but maybe it's not so, you know, we have to be pragmatic about it as well and say, okay, if we can't rely on the European Commission for this kind of funding, then we need to put pressure on industry, or then we need Germany. If Germany wants to be amazing in the AI space, then we need our government to
Well, it's
to
great
help
that our government is listening, and before we really run out of time, Alex, you've been waiting very patiently. If you can make this a little bit brief, because I really want to give a chance to sort of reflect a little bit back what advice we give to the German government. Brilliant bridge on how to spend the money that they've now decided that they want to spend, and where we're asking for advice. But Alex, please go first. And if you want to combine this with advice to the German government on how to spend their money, go ahead.
So maybe regarding the question whether we should really just rely on the companies, no, I don't think we should do that, because AI is like really important. Like, for example, in the health sector, do we rely on companies only? No, we don't. There's like the state is involved. Do we rely in other sectors on companies? No. I mean, to a certain degree, always, yes, and that's important. But I think we should always also have the state and Europe itself in there. And then regarding your newly come out question, I think in general that a higher base funding would be quite helpful for many universities, right? Because right now, a large amount of extremely talented people at universities are spending lots of their time writing grants. And while that is of course important, because it, like, you know, factors good projects and so on, it also keeps them away from doing like real research most of the time. And I think if we had higher base funding, that would greatly help.
Yeah, there's another idea that came up in our discussions before that would sort of maybe strike a bit of a balance. I mean, base funding is always tricky, because then there are some people who say, well, how do we know that it's well spent, right? But there is one thing that I think occurred to some of us and then found, I think, unanimous support in the group of Alexander von Humboldt professors that the German government could do right away, and that is, let's take the ERC, the European Research Council's grants, which are ranked and very carefully evaluated every year in 3 tiers for junior researchers, mid-career researchers, and senior researchers. And you know, many of them these days, actually an increasing fraction, has to do with AI in the broadest sense, right? Naturally, because AI is transforming all the other sciences as well. And then only a fraction of those that are rated should be funded actually get money, because there isn't enough money. What some of our European neighbors and friends have started doing is at the national level just say, these have been competitively evaluated at the European level. Those that don't get funded, although they are fundable, just because there wasn't enough money, we fund them nationally. And I think one of the messages that we wanted to send to the German government is, why don't you start doing that right away, starting with the next round of ERCs, because we all felt that would be money very well spent. And that would also be money that would be equitably spent on young researchers, mid-career researchers, and the older folks like us, right? So let's quickly, before we wrap up, hear a few more ideas. What else should the German government actually do? Go for it, Christian.
So obviously, having more money from government, having more dedicated money for specific topics, not in the broader sense. A lot of stuff goes into many different areas, and it then trickles down somewhere, and there is not this huge gain out of it. So there was one article at some point in time which was called Digitale Dilettanten, where we had this AI strategy in Germany, and from the $3.5 billion euro meant to be spent on AI, 350 million had been somehow allocated, which is basically the AI service centers and the AI competence centers. Which also draws attention to a problem that we have. There is no very neat way to get to this money to actually do research. So it takes eternity to get a grant funded, and it's like if you now run an application 2 years later, you get something, and 2 years from now we even don't know what's happening in AI. So that is way too slow. And if we want to have one plea to the government, we need to be way more fast in giving the money. And at some point in time, really, if we have 3.5 billion, it needs to be 3.5 billion, not 350 million. Secondly, we were discussing the AI Act. I was a little hesitant when and where to raise a hand. The AI Act in itself has a very great vision. It says we want to innovate and we want to make it in a way that we as a society can live with AI in a very sustainable, ethical way. Now, it then comes 130 pages, and when you look into Brussels, you usually get like 8,000 pages how you now need to run your AI centers. Now, if the application of AI Act is very complicated, then nobody has any gain from it. No AI ethics, no AI technology, nothing. So what we want to have is an AI Act that actually is understandable and is doable. And then it can include ethics and include all the fantastic stuff that we have. And then it's going to be an export paradigm that is going to US, to other places, because they will love it.
So you think that's something the German government should push for, perhaps, given their leadership roles in the European Commission as well? Excellent. Jochen, what do you think the German government needs to do?
Well, it's quite funny because I'm also from an industry, real estate, which is asking right now for money from the government. I think it's what a lot of industries are doing these days. What should they do? I think generally more money for AI, yes. And I know that I'm sitting with a lot of university people here, and my wife's a university researcher, so I sympathize with a lot of filling out forms to get some money to do anything. So, but we've seen in the US, I think that companies are leading this revolution in some regard as well. So if the government is willing to give some more money for this topic, why not also give tax incentives to companies to develop it in-house? Because I think we need both sides of the equation to get Europe going. And a lot of German companies are not very digital per se. And if we want to get them more digital and more AI, then I think why not give them a tax incentive or some discounts if they develop some in-house?
Or if we create big compute resources, why not make them accessible for companies as well, and have grants in the form of compute cycles rather than just euros, right? Do you think that might help companies?
Yeah, absolute. We pay too much tax in Germany anyway, so I think anything that helps there is don't give money, just reduce taxes if you do the right thing in this regard.
We pay too many taxes, but on the other hand, only some of our bridges crumble and not all of them, right? So there is some benefit that we sometimes get back too. I don't want to end on this note, but we're going a little bit into overtime, and here we need to wrap it up. So I would say, Oliver, anything else that the German government should do? No? Alexander, anything yet you think? Amy, I'm sure you have advice for the German government. Go for it.
Spoiler alert, it's going to be about sustainability issues. But I think that the German government really should and could take a stand in terms of green AI, green infrastructures, and should be requiring both industry and academia to measure carbon emissions or energy consumption, should be helping to provide resources to purchase the ast GPUs that are more energy efficient, and should look at the procurement chain. So if we had, if we were obliged to do that, then we'd have a certain baseline of data where then we could look at, is there a need to cap emissions? Is there, which training is more energy efficient, or which methodology of training is more energy efficient than the other? This is the first step to getting towards a vision, in 5 to 10 years of what creating this technology in a sustainable way could actually mean.
And of course, that's pretty compatible with also European directions that we are already committed to, so that wouldn't
it's not.
That wouldn't sound like a very outlandish ask.
I know, yeah.
Right?
And then the other thing that I would say also is, congratulations to all of the young researchers. Your posters were fantastic, and I loved talking to so many of you. I also found that, among the students, I was pressing ethics questions, obviously, and there was this interest, and there was this kind of like, I had thought about it, but don't really know who I could talk to about it. We need more AI ethicists. The students are curious, and it's not about, again, like what I said, Vincent and I, it's not about saying like, no, you can't do that research. It's about, have you thought about, the binary distinction between male, female? Is this, a distinction that you've created, or is self-identified? Having those conversations, this will create a new generation of AI researchers that is aware of these questions.
So we need the right direction. We need more compute resources. We need more research into publicly funded capabilities. We also need more money into industry. I think it is fitting, we could go on for a long time, but we're now over time. It is fitting to have the representative of the general public have the almost last word here. So Jochen, what?
Oh, actually, I didn't want the last word, I just had a question, maybe I don't do it, but I think the question that was on my mind is that Europe is not so good in software anyways, usually, but we're usually good in hardware. And there, I don't know much, but I see like that GPUs is basically consoling around NVIDIA and a few other companies. Is there any hope in Europe that we can catch up on hardware or play a significant role there?
And we won't discuss this now because we won't have time, but I will tell you one thing, you're onto something cool, because in our round discussing this previously, ramping up the focus on European chip design and manufacture was one of the points that there was some broad agreement on. So with that said, it's so sad, right? Because I could certainly keep going, and they could keep going, and maybe you could keep going, but there is other parts of the program that some of us have to attend of AI Week. So I want to ask, first of all, I want to ask you for a great round of applause for our junior researchers who have come from all around Germany to present their research to you today, to the general public, and to a very, very highly educated and very skeptical and critical audience of the world's top AI experts, essentially. That's a scary thing to do, and I think they did an awesome job. So let's give them a great hand of applause. And that goes to you as well, Alexander, of course. Secondly, I'd like to really acknowledge our colleagues from the Alexander von Humboldt professorships that were not on stage, but very much informed the discussion that we had by the pre-discussion that we had. And I can assure you, we're going to be for another, I think, 18 hours or so in Aachen. We're going to have to sleep some of these hours, but the rest we're going to spend continuing to debate and discuss these things, and then also hopefully find a way to feed some of it back to the interested public. Then I want to ask the people, I want to really thank the people on stage here. So I want to thank Markus. Thank you very much. I want to thank Christian. I want to thank Jochen, Oliver, Alexander, and last but certainly not least, my dear colleague Amy, who has played a crucial role in making this event happen. And then finally, I'd like to gratefully acknowledge the folks who are running the Digital Hub here. We are very grateful that we could use your fantastic space, which really gave this all an atmosphere that I think we very much enjoyed, and also you as an audience hopefully enjoyed. And I want to thank all of you for being here today, for showing an interest, for feeding us your questions. I apologize that we couldn't get through each and every question, but I made a judgment call that maybe it's better to discuss some questions in depth and in breadth than to go through as many as possible. If you disagree with that, you can let us know, and next time we'll run it a little bit differently, promised. So thank you all for being here, for interacting with us, and thank you for supporting Aachen AI Week. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.